Uh, Sorry about that. Thank you for that, David. Why don't we start off with, I think, a question a lot of people have had. Obviously, you have had it, and the number on the call. Like, how do you know? Like, you got the call, and this is what you're supposed to be doing. I know it varies quite a bit, but what has been your experience, and what have you learned from others, either through your process or those that are also in seminary right now?
Yeah, that's the most common question I get. How do you know? And I always turn the question around and say vocation is not a fact that I know with my brain. It's more like a fire that I feel with my heart. When we talk about God's will, I'm not looking to talk about knowing God's will, it's a mystery, but developing clarity. So discernment is ongoing, of course. It's a journey. I'm still on that journey, but speaking from my experience, where it really began was about 7 years ago. A buddy challenged me to do a Bible in a year reading plan. And through doing that work, I came closer to the Lord through the scripture, um, being more open to his will, wanting to do something for the gospel, but not knowing what yet. The vocational aspect of the discernment really kicked off for me with the Eparchy of Parma men's retreat. A lot of our guys there were there from Holy Resurrection. Deacon Greg was there. Um, and what really touched me the most was when the priest showed us the ritual preparation of the gifts before the divine liturgy. It's a ritual that most people never see, and it's called the proscomedia. And when the priest was preparing the bread and the wine that will become the Eucharist, I heard him pronounce the words from the prophet Isaiah, like a lamb led to the slaughter, like a sheep that before its shearers is silent. And of course, I've heard those words many times. We read them on Good Friday, but I was moved by that in such a way that I could not explain. I was so deeply touched, and from then on, it's been like a mystery that I had to draw closer to, and I've been on that journey, ever moving closer to that mystery since then.
Appreciate that. I have my answer for this, but I'd be curious on yours. Layman, it seems like for every person, there's a different path, like a
Yeah.
different knowing, if you will. Like you said, you're confident, but not 100% certain. But it seems like there's so many different ways for the religious vocation. You'll see some gentlemen in their 60s when they begin in whatever capacity. Some start when they seem to be 22. Has that been your experience, at least what you're seeing among your, I don't know if classmates is the proper word, but with the other seminarians?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Everybody's path is different, everybody's life is different. God has a plan of salvation that He has optimized for each individual person, and that goes for your vocational path too. But I also like to tell everybody that sometimes the Lord kind of looks at you with the question of vocation and says, "What would you like the story of your life to look like?" Let's write this story together. And then you can kind of work with him on that if it's compatible with his will. So, um, not so much approaching it from a mystery as so much as a cooperation or a synergy with God. And then it really takes off from there.
So prior to Bible in a year 7 years ago, did it ever cross your mind like strongly, or just it just kind of hit you really hard about then?
No, that's an interesting question. I can remember very clearly in high school, where I went to high school in Akron, that one of my classmates asked me if I was going to be a priest, and right away I said no. I didn't even think about it, just flat out no. And I guess since then I've learned never tell God no because He has a way of turning the tables on you. So um, yeah, I guess the really the vocational piece of it hit me rather later, more recently in life. So I guess that's just my word of encouragement to everyone is you never know what surprise the Lord has in store for you. And it's a journey. You don't know how it will go out. So take it one step at a time and just follow him at every moment.
Okay, appreciate that. this next one, and I know, and you gave me quite an education, which I appreciate when we've spoken previously a couple of times to this. But can you walk through like all the steps? And by that I mean, so when you said this is it, what did you do after that? Did you call your local priest? Like, where did you? How did you get from there to where you are now?
Yeah, the vocation process, it's a difficult journey. It involves a lot of course, prayer, talking with your priest at first in spiritual direction. Then he may recommend you to talk to the vocations director. And then from there, if things are looking good, then the vocations director may invite you to apply. And it's a very long and involved application process. The application is many, many pages. If you're married, your wife has to fill out part of the pages. There's a medical exam, there's a psychological exam, there's background checks. You need letters of recommendation from people that know you, and then when you put together all this large application packet, sacramental records, of course, too, and then the seminary has to review it and they vote on you too. So I always emphasize many people don't realize it's not it's not like a university where you pay the money and then you're allowed to go. It's a discernment on both ends that you have to discern that you want to go in this path and continue. And the church and the seminary also enter into a discernment that you're a good fit to continue on to the next step.
So, if I recall, and I don't know that it varies necessarily, probably periodically it does over the years, but if you recall, the application was roughly 30 pages.
That's something like that. I can't recall exactly, but yes, it's a long thing, and it asks you about your history in the church. It asks you about your vocational discernment. You write an essay about what the mystery of holy orders means to you, whether it's the holy diaconate or the holy presbyterate. So that there's an autobiographical sketch that's part of it. And so it kind of covers all aspects of your life, and they want to make sure that it's really to make sure that you don't end up in a place that would be a bad situation for you. So it's about helping you to make sure that this is for you and that this is where the Lord wants you. And again, it's a journey, it's ongoing and is evaluated on an ongoing basis.
So, from an applicant's perspective, is that, do I get a green light, if you will, in our case from Father Russell that says you should apply? Like, how do you get to that stage?
Yeah, we have a vocations review board of which Father John Russell is part of that as our vocations director. And there will be an interview process, and the members of the review board will make a recommendation at the end
Before you
to
before
the
you go to the
bishop. Yes,
interview,
go
so
ahead.
I want to talk about that. Sorry. Who gives you permission, I guess, that this is a good idea? Here's an application. Start working on
Oh, I guess that would come from the vocations director. Yes.
it. Okay.
He's the one that sends the application to you. If you go on the BCS website and click on the links, you're not going to find the application. It's only something that is given to you after you've been in spiritual direction, in conversation with vocations director, etc.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's
Yeah,
helpful.
that's no, that's a good question.
The
So that's the process.
I mean, my impression, it was such an education you gave me, and it all made sense afterwards as to this is like really important stuff for everybody. So I understand the depth of it. Share with the group if you don't mind. Okay, now it's interview time. You've got 5 to 10. You're on. Go. Who are those 5 to 10 people that you're interviewing with?
Oh, they're members of the eparchy that assist the bishop in this kind of decision-making process. It could be members of the diaconate. It could be other people from the schools that we have, or just other workers that collaborate through our chancery. And the questions that they ask are something along the lines of, can you talk about your vocation story? Can you articulate that sense of vocation that you have? Can you be honest about your strengths and weaknesses? How would you react in certain situations, react under pressure? And it's mostly, again, a discernment to help you. Ultimately, they're on your side. They want to help you with this discernment too, to make sure that the vocational calling is something for you.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know how many were interviewed you or on the panel, but let's say it's 10 for argument's sake. So the interview is complete. What do those 10 then do?
Well, they'll have a conversation among themselves, of which I am not a part, and then there's a recommendation ultimately that's made to the bishop and the vocations director, and then I guess the final decision is always with the bishop. So we always say God willing and bishop willing. But yeah, so that's the path that we follow.
And do they vote independently? Oh,
That I'm not sure. I
okay,
don't see
it's
that
okay.
part of it, but
Was
you
just
hope and
curious.
you pray, and if it's what the Lord wants for you, then He'll make a way. He'll open the doors that you're not able to open for you if
Sure.
it's what He really wants for you. So that's what I've
Yep.
seen from my experience.
Appreciate that. Now, if you don't mind, because this will be new, it's certainly not to some on the call. You could guess the who's, but for the rest, like me 3 weeks ago when we first talked, or we first spoke, how many years? What are you learning? What's the track from starting to finishing? And by finish, I understand not everyone is meant to be ordained. That's part of the process. But for those that do become ordained, what's the start to the finish? Like, what's the components?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we have now to start out, there's a program called aspirancy, which is it's a stage before you go into the full theological study. And it's good because it's a time to get acclimated to seminary life. It's a slightly lighter academic schedule, and it's a time to get caught up on prerequisites for guys that are coming from a variety of backgrounds that do not have the right prerequisites, as I did not. So it's a good way to get guys caught up who are not quite ready for academic master's level theology, and it's a good way to get introduced to the program. So that piece of it can be, we're looking at an average of about 2 years now. But in theory, that could be longer or shorter. There's some flexibility on how you get that done based on what prerequisites you come in with. And then the actual bulk of the training is 4 years after that, that is called configuration. Why is it called configuration? Well, it's you can think of it as being configured to Christ. You're being configured to Christ on the cross. And so that's the idea there. That's your most intense work where you learn theology studies, canon law. Um, you have a clinical pastoral education that you'll do actually at a hospital. And based on the way your discernment goes, toward the end of the configuration stage, you could be ordained in the diaconate for your final year based on the recommendations of your vocations director and how your discernment is going. And of course, you have to discern every year. The staff discerns with you every year, and they'll vote on you whether the continuation is recommended for you. So that's what I tell everyone that there is an evaluation process every year. I am evaluated every year. But really the staff here is on my side and I feel that. So they're trying to make sure that I'm in the place where I need to be.
At curiosity, what's the clinical work like at the hospital? Is that, well, I'll just let you
Yes.
share
Yeah,
versus guess.
clinical pastoral education, that's something that is done at the end of the second year of configuration. And so if I were to go into the clinical pastoral education rotation, that is a summer where I would spend at a hospital 5 days a week, pretty much all day, every day. And you learn to interact in a sort of a chaplaincy type of function, interacting with patients, coordinating what their spiritual needs are, if they need to talk, if they just need counseling, if they need someone to sit with them, or if they would like to see a priest to receive the divine mysteries. You just kind of discern in each situation what does each person need, and it just teaches you how to function and interact in a hospital type of setting because of course sick calls to the hospital are things that are a big part of priestly ministry. And there would be seminary classes, of course, before your summer assignment at the hospital, and also following your assignment there to unpack what you learned.
Okay, appreciate that. I'm going to use the wrong terminology, but the evaluation grade, which I'm sure is wrong phraseology, but at the end of each year, you get your evaluation. Is that you get the results, if you will, or is that another mini application? Like, how does that part work?
We have a series of meetings, a series of evaluations that we complete. There's peer evaluations where we evaluate each other anonymously, and then they share the results with us just in a meeting. We don't really see those results directly. We write a self-evaluation where you talk about how your discernment is going, how the year went, and I just turned that in this week. And so when I write my self-evaluation, I would express my wish to continue with the program at that point. And then after the formation staff combines the results of all this data, all this information, the results of all these meetings, then they will have a vote, and then I will have a meeting to receive the results of that vote, of whether or not I'm allowed to continue, invited back for another year of formation, as we say.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, yesterday, 28 days ago, pick one. What's a day in the life like? I know they vary. So, what's generally speaking, you get up and then what?
Yes, a day in the life of the seminarian. It's different every day. Some days I have a chapel service early in the morning, or we may have a chapel service in the afternoon. We usually have about one communal worship service per day. Um, and the academic schedule, if I were to show you my academic schedule, it might look like it has a lot of empty space. So that might be your first reaction. But when you diagram out all the time that I need for the service project, the liturgies and the time preparing for them, the prayer rule that you have to budget in, I go to formation meetings, I go to a communal meal. By the time I add all those things in, the day is pretty much booked solid. So it's a little bit different every day. I also have a house chore. I have to budget in time for that. And all these things form aspects of your formation. Um, I guess I receive formation in a variety of ways, not all of them in the classroom.
Okay. The and again, this varies as well, I'm sure. But would you equate? You said you went to college at Notre Dame. Just from an academic perspective, equivalent in your mind? Granted, you went a couple of years ago versus now, so that factors in. But it's collegiate level, if you will. Is it more difficult? I mean, I'm sure it depends on the individual as well, in terms of how quickly something may come to them.
Right, right. So what I would say is the initial stage is the academic program is lighter in the academic formation of the aspirancy program. And so I have yet to see what the academic formation is like in the configuration stage, but it's expected to be a master's level curriculum by the
Okay.
end of the 4 years of the configuration stage. You do earn a master's in theology, so it is supposed to be that caliber of
Okay.
a theological work.
Appreciate that. What about day in the life type of stuff? Can the seminarian hold a job?
Generally, no. The formational obligations that I have at the seminary have to take first precedent. And that's part of the formation as well. I have to get used to the fact that my commitment to the church comes first. And so it's not really possible for me to keep a regular schedule at a third party location, place of
Sure.
employment. So it's generally not possible.
Okay. Is seminary year round, or do you get a break at all during summertime holidays? I know you do for some of the holidays, but summertime, is that off, if you will, or it's 12 months out of the year?
Well, we do have the usual schooling breaks that you would expect on our calendar, summer break, Christmas break, a week or two off around Pascha. However, we don't say that formation stops over the summer. Generally, I would work with my vocations director and bishop to work out a summer assignment. Last year, I was assigned at St. Joseph's Parish in Brecksville,
Hmm.
and that way your formation can continue over the summer. So I was able to continue uh, learning about the liturgy, functioning in a parish environment, uh, teaching some adult education classes that I was able to teach, leading reader services, and that way my formation doesn't stop just because I leave the campus and go on a break. That way the formation can be ongoing.
Okay. How about that's your transition? What about and again, I get it's completely different for everybody, but what about the transition for the family and the spouse?
Yeah, I would say that's probably the most challenging part about getting started with seminary is that unless you live in Pittsburgh, you do have to move. So, and it's always hardest on the wife and the kids and the family. And I look at that as even also part of my formation is that it's teaching us that following the Lord will require some level of sacrifice. It requires doing what you're told to do as far, in a sense of obedience, but in a joyful sense of acceptance of that sacrifice. And so, although there are sacrifices, it does lead to joy ultimately. And
Sure,
that's one of the ways that you know you're in the right place, is that even though there may be sorrows along the way, the sorrows lead to joy. And that's what I can speak from my experience.
that's great perspective. Thank you. The next question: we don't seem, I'll say, the Catholic Church. We don't seem to have a bank of recruiters calling people every day. So, whose job is it to attract people into religious vocations?
Yeah, people ask all the time, what can we do to support vocations? And I would say probably three things come to mind. Number one is pray. Pray that our Lord touch the hearts of young people, young men and women. We need monastics as well as clergy. Uh, Pray this prayer that comes straight out of the gospel. Lord of the harvest, master of the harvest, send forth laborers into your harvest. That comes straight out of the Gospel of Matthew. Our Lord directly tells us to say this prayer. And the second thing I would say is encourage someone in your parish that you know to consider vocation. Ask someone, have you taken the next step? Have you talked to our pastor? Have you talked to our vocations director? Sometimes guys are hesitant to get started just because no one invited them. And the third thing that I would suggest is just do what you can to contribute to vibrant parish life. Help with the building projects, encourage young people to get started on projects around the church, whether it's everything from liturgy to building maintenance. If you have a gift for music and can teach singing, do that. Older guys that can teach the younger men how to altar serve, do that. Do whatever you can to build up the life of your parish and make it a place that is attractive vocationally for people to see that they could devote their lives to it.
That's great. I appreciate it. So, if someone's on the call, and someone is, I don't know the who, but somebody is, if they're kind of wondering for themselves, okay, or they really, really believe someone else ought to consider, what would you recommend their first step be
Well,
to?
number one is take it, yeah, number one is take it to prayer and then take it to spiritual direction. If you don't have a spiritual director, start with your pastor or another priest as a trusted advisor for you. It doesn't have to be a priest. It could be one of our nuns, a monastic, or it could even be a lay person to start out with, and then just someone that you trust who's a spiritual guide that can guide you, and then a priest who can talk to you about what vocation is like. So I guess that's obviously the first step is pray a lot and then bounce some of those ideas off of spiritual director. If you don't know how to go to a spiritual director, um, the things that you talk about in that, when I go to my spiritual director, I talk about my prayer life. I talk about um, how I'm doing regarding different things I'm thinking about regarding spiritual questions. Um, questions that I encounter about the Bible, questions that I encounter about anything, about problems with daily life, things you're thinking. And the spiritual director will help me to sort through all my thoughts and help to gain some clarity about what comes from the Lord and what doesn't. And that's the important part that the spiritual director helps you. Obedience to a spiritual director regarding a prayer rule, obedience to him regarding what he recommends that you do is one of the key things in advancing in the spiritual life. Because if you were going to climb Mount Everest, you would not do that without a guide, someone who's been there before. So why would we do the same in the spiritual life? You need a guide to help you along the way, and that's what all the church fathers attest to.
Okay, appreciate that. And then I don't think this is out of bounds. I hope it's not in my mind. So please correct me if it's wrong. But if someone's uncertain and they just need to talk to somebody, I don't think a priest, let's go with a priest or say it's Deacon Greg, I don't think they would ever take offense to having that conversation, no matter who the person is. They may get different feedback than perhaps they expected, but is there any reason anyone should be bashful at all to just take the step versus just sit there and wonder?
Oh, I would say for sure, definitely the more conversations you can have, the more clarity that you can develop about the Lord's will for your life, the better you'll get about articulating what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and more conversations can only help. Step out and take a risk. I know it is difficult to talk about yourself. It is, deeply intimate about yourself to talk about what the Lord is doing in your life, but the more you have these conversations, the easier it will get and the greater clarity that will develop. So absolutely, I would agree.
Okay, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure that was proper, etc. In my mind, you're not going to be hurt. Go find out. Like, just take a step, um, and who knows where that may lead you.
Yeah, and you can just start by going to confession. Just get in line for confession at your church and bring the priest your sins and at the same time say, and I have these thoughts that are affecting me in this way, and I'm trying to discern if this is from the Lord or not. And the confessional is a great place to start that conversation if you're having trouble getting started.
Okay, great suggestion. Thank you. I'm going to jump off for a second. The questions we had ahead of time, David. Christopher asked, "Did you discern between deaconate and the presbyterian? If so, how do you understand your call towards the priesthood versus deaconate?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Diaconate, excuse me."
Yeah, the diaconate and the priesthood are two different vocations. And we don't look at the diaconate as simply a stepping stone to the priesthood. So you do want to have clarity about to which one you are called. Of course, there are aspects of both that will be appealing to you, but you have to pay close attention to the desires on your heart to see which one the Lord is leading you to. So, for example, regarding the diaconate, um, the word in Greek, diakonos, means server. And the diaconate is really a calling to put yourself at the service of whatever the community needs, whether it's everything from building maintenance to cleanup work to catechetics with people preparing for baptism. Of course, yes, you put on a vestment and sing in front of the church, but that's not the only part of it. It's a lot more. It's doing whatever is needed in that parish community, answering the call for whatever they need. Regarding the priesthood, I would say that vocation is completely a call to give of yourself in a self-emptying kind of way, in the way that Christ did. It's a call to put your entire life on the altar along with the offering, and you become the sacrifice. So and unite it to Christ in that way. So it's a little bit different calling, but you do need to do some kind of differentiation. For me, speaking from my experience, I can say that I was drawn to the prayers of the liturgy, and I keep finding myself drawn in more deeply into the mystery, as I said, moving closer to the mystery of the priestly prayers at the liturgy. For example, the anaphora of Saint Basil the Great, and how moving that entire prayer is, and that you could study that prayer for years and always find something in there that still touches me. So I think there's a ways that you pay attention to these desires and feel which way the Lord is tugging your heart. But be completely open and honest with him. It's like a balance. It's like a scale. You need to have the balance perfectly balanced at the beginning so that the slightest breath of air can move it in either direction. So you offer the Lord either one and then see which way he pushes your scale. That's the best way
Okay.
I can explain it.
So I, I think I heard it right, but just to confirm, someone may not know until they, or perhaps they do, but there's probably cases where I don't know which way the Lord's calling me. And either you start with that knowledge that as I discern, or should someone really be on a path from day one in seminary? Like, what do you see with your peers in seminary?
Yeah, what I can see from my experience has been that the discernment is an ongoing journey, and sometimes the Lord does call us to pivot on that journey. Sometimes He can start us off in one path, and that was the only way to get us moving, but then
Got
He may call us to see something else along that path and call us to turn at another direction. So it's not a bad thing if a guy enters seminary in one track and then decides that the Lord is calling him to either change tracks or leave seminary altogether. It does not mean that a guy discerned incorrectly. There was a lot of good that probably came from those years of seminary. Ultimately, seminary is a school of how to be a good Christian, and you leave this place a better Christian for having come here is the ultimate goal. Um, Something really helpful that our rector told us on the first day that we were here is that if you graduate from this program the same person that you were the day you entered, then you wasted your time. Ultimately, it's about personal change and being open to that growth and whatever the Holy Spirit shows you. We talk about four dimensions of formation or four pillars, if you prefer that term. It's not just academics, it's human formation. How can you be a good person that's approachable and relatable, easy to work with? Pastoral formation. How can you adapt your ministry to the needs of the individual people that are coming to you? Spiritual formation. How can I improve my relationship with God and have prayer be as important to me as the oxygen that I breathe? If you don't have that, then you will wither and die. So, ultimately, it is a journey where you have to incorporate all these things, and it's not a bad thing if you pivot or have to turn around and come out entirely. The Lord will work something good out of whatever you offer him.
Thank you for that. Is there anything that you thought you were in good shape going in, whether it be prior education or church involvement, et cetera, you really thought was going to help you that's really been didn't help you at all? Like what surprised you, I guess, versus what you perhaps thought before you started?
Yeah, I guess I was surprised by when I was packing to come to seminary, I was stressed over what to bring, what books should I bring, what resources do I need to bring for my classes, and most of those things were not what I actually needed. Most of the things that you need, you can get while you're here. I was surprised by the unexpected opportunities for formation. As I've said, the things outside the classroom, the interactions with people here, and the ways you get formed by the conversations and the other activities. Um, you come here expecting, I know I can speak from experience. I was expecting to come here to take classes, but it's a lot more than just taking classes. So I was
Sure.
surprised by the unexpected formation.
Okay. The I should know this. I don't. The total number of current seminarians.
Oh, yes, we currently have 12 from a
Okay.
variety of eparchies, including some Melkites from the Eparchy of Newton. From Parma, we have four. I'm one of four other guys
Right.
here. So,
Okay. So if you looked at the 12, again, this is going to be different, or you could look at other Catholic churches, if you will, seminarians. how does the seminary balance the financial aspects? So I can't work even if I wanted to. I just don't have time. Like, and again, it's a different question for everybody. But if you can make some general statements, how do folks manage that?
Yeah, ultimately, yeah, the financial piece is a big question and people want to know how do you make it work. I would say it's different in every case. When I look at all 12 guys, the answer to that question is something different. So I would encourage everyone to pray about that and realize that the Lord owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Money is not a problem for him. If he really wants you to do this, he'll make a way. And for each of the 12 guys that are here, he has made a way in some unique ways, some different ways, whether savings or some side business or if a spouse can work, if you're married. These are just some things you can look into. Private donors, these are all possibilities. Don't leave any stone unturned. Are there grants you can apply for? Some of that money is out there. I would just say if the Lord really wants you to do something, he's not going to let an obstacle like money get in the way. You and I always look at money like it's some big limiting factor, but the Lord does not look at it that way. So he'll
Okay,
make a way for you.
thank you on that. I would bet, I'm sure, throughout the country, I'll just say that there's some like I can't afford it and never take that first step to learn stuff like this. Where and that's part of where I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for everyone being on the call to begin with, but for those that then watch the recording, for someone just take that step if you're interested. Like, go find out versus coming to your own conclusion unexamined, so to speak. Um, Another one. Let me see something here. I think we answered that, David. No easy answer on this, so it'd have to be generality, and it's awesome. One of your kids is on the line too, but high level, like, how do you balance? I'm a dad. I'm a seminarian. Like, how do you try to balance that?
Yeah, it's a difficult job and it is a sacrifice for the family as well because dad is less available. So it is important that the wife and the children also be part of the discernment and feel like they are part of the journey, that the calling is for them as well. But the best advice I can give is the advice someone gave to me many years ago when I asked medical students, how do you go to medical school while being married? And the guy told me I treat it like a 9 to 5 job. I get there as soon as I have to in the morning, and I'll stay working on something until at least 5. If I'm finished with classes early one day, I don't go home. I just keep my nose to the grindstone and keep doing the next thing. That way, I can always make myself available in the evenings, come home to the house that we bought in Pittsburgh and have dinner, read the kids their Bible stories, put them to bed or be involved in that process, do some kind of family prayer, nighttime prayer. And that's the best advice I can give is get a strategy, diagram it out on the calendar if you have to, but get a strategy for managing your time well during the day so that you can be free at least in the evenings. But it is a cross for the family that there are times when dad is less available. But again, even though there are sorrows, the sorrows lead to joy in the end.
Appreciate that. Appreciate your family supporting you as well. The We're getting close to the targeted time. Any other general thoughts for the group? Um, Lessons learned? Any suggestions? Anything you think that surprised you in addition that you just even through the application process you just didn't cross your mind? I'm sure you grow and learn as you go. But any other final thoughts for the group?
No, I guess the last thing I would just want to say is thank you for your prayers. Please keep praying for us. It is a difficult journey and your prayers enable us to do what we do. So lift us up in prayer and keep praying. Master of the harvest, send forth laborers into your harvest.
Okay. We will wrap it up. I want to thank everybody again for taking time to participate. I want to thank you for the questions that you submitted early as well as during this call. Deacon Greg, thank you. for your presence and your prayer. And then, David, this has been awesome. So, really, really enjoyed it. Really appreciate it. I'm sure it's going to have ripple benefits for those on the call as well as um, those that watch the recording.
Yes,
God
thank
bless
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for organizing this.
My pleasure. Thank you.